Good morning and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is bright and early and me and Liam are here, 10:30. I've got to get on a train. I'm back on film set, hooray, this week, filming The Huntress of Auschwitz. So I've still got the NUFC Matters show sorted. Me and Liam are doing this one. We've got Toon Tipster on tomorrow night doing his dream team, and I should be back for Thursday nights live. It'll just be me and Super Mac John's having a week off. But Liam, how are you, mate?
I'm really good. I would love to say it was, you said bright and early. It's certainly not bright outside, is it? It's a horrendous day on Tyneside. But yeah, no, really good. Much earlier start for us today, but we'll just crack on with the questions. Before we do, I want to quickly mention just a little shout out. I promised I'd give somebody, because I bumped into somebody at the weekend. He was one of the biggest fans of NUFC Matters you'll ever come across. Loves your show on Friday night, loves the stuff with Gibbo. And Super Mac as well, and obviously watches this show regular. So I said I'd give him a shout out. So here you are, Stephen Jackson. Good to meet you the weekend, and enjoy the show.
Yeah, enjoy it, Stephen. Thank you very much for your kind comments, mate, and good to hear that you enjoy the show. It's always good to get the feedback, and yeah, it just makes up for all the minor negativity that we tend to get every now and then. Plenty questions, Liam. We're going to try and get through as many of these as always as possible, and I'll try to make them as different as possible. We'll take a few off Twitter as well, because we did put a shout out onto Twitter, not knowing that we would have almost 100 people watching live. So big thank you to you who've made made a little time slot in your day to come and watch us live. Thank you very much. John was first in, so we'll give him the pleasure of the first question. ESM's our main only threat. Do you agree that to play him as a striker is a mistake? Running at defences from deep is his main strength. He cannot do this as a striker. And he also goes on to say, it's like last season during that period, we hardly won a point. Team selection's debatable, tactics dubious, and the less said about the nonsensical Dwight Gale situation, the better.
I wouldn't say, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't say that's the biggest problem Newcastle United have had. I don't believe that Alan St-Maximin playing centrally is the worst selection decision that Steve Bruce has made. But by the same token, do I think he's better playing in his natural position? Of course I do. I think he could play out on the left, I think, in this system, but I think the return of Callum Wilson is almost certain to see him move out there, I would imagine. But we'll probably not see that till after the international break, and fingers crossed it is Tottenham, but it sounds like it will be. So, yeah, I would agree to an extent. You want to play players in their natural position, but I think there's been some bad decisions made with team selection this season, but I probably wouldn't, in my opinion, rank the Alan St-Maximin central one as one of the worst.
Yeah, I would agree. Tom says, Liam, what's your thoughts on Simon Jordan saying that he thinks Mike Ashley is too busy to sack Bruce?
I'm honestly, I'll say it again on here, I'm not interested in what Simon Jordan's got to say. I genuinely don't value the guy's opinion. I don't value I think he's just he's clickbait for the radio. He's just a rent-a-gob who's made a pretty good career out of talking rubbish on TalkSport, over-elaborating his words, trying to tie people in knots with his ridiculous use of vocabulary. Yeah, I think he's pathetic. I think he's embarrassing. So you can tell what I think of him there.
Yeah, it could be a T-shirt for the food bank, that one. I think John from Q Tech is in the chat. Darren says, morning, Liam and Steve. With the ongoing battle between Newcastle and the EPL, are you surprised they have not charged Newcastle with having two number 19s on the pitch versus Wolves? Yeah, this was interesting. I mean, I didn't catch up with this until social media, but Manquillo and Fernandez, obviously, we seem to have run out of shirts at the weekend.
Yeah, it was totally bizarre, and in the current climate, really just underlined how much of a shambles the place looks, really. I think that's all I took from it. I'm not sure if it probably does break certain rules, but I'm not sure if anything's happening on that front. Not what I wanted to, really. I mean, you don't want the club to be brought into legal proceedings or anything like that, or sanctioned at all for that, because it probably was a case of just, either putting the wrong shirt on or not having a spare, which in itself is ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. John, we will give you another question. He goes, because it is a good one. Do you think it would be a good idea for Ashley to swap the roles of Bruce and Jones, That way he could avoid compensation for Bruce and some sanity might return to our football. Now, that's interesting because Holly and I obviously were at the game on Saturday, and she came out on Sunday and suggested that maybe Graeme Jones isn't all he's cracked up to be with our poor display with set pieces so far. We noticed that in pre-season that our set pieces were pretty poor. Put it down to blowing the cobwebs out, having a bit of time off, etc. And Graeme Jones, of course, being on a prolonged international duty. But ultimately, Liam, our corners and free kicks are abysmal now. We can't beat the first man. And would that make any difference, do you think?
I think Newcastle have gone from a team in 3 years. Forget all the Rafa comparisons, the defensive and the offensive comparisons and personnel, etc. But they've gone from a team who regularly, for example, Jamal Lascelles, Kieran Clark, always chipped in with a couple of goals from corners every season. They do not look like scoring from set pieces at all at the moment. Now, you could say that's delivery, but I also think it's utterly clueless, the stuff they're doing. I actually thought at the start of the year when Jones came in, it was one of the obvious things that they looked to have changed. They looked to be different. They looked to be little tactics, little ploys, little points of difference with corners in particular. None of that now. It's just gone back to the usual lob it into the box and hit and hope, and it's rubbish. It's so easy to defend against. On Graeme Jones, I'll go back to an article that I wrote. I think it was pre-Brighton or maybe just after Brighton. We're doing exactly the same thing as Holly did on Sunday, as you say, calling into question Graeme Jones. If you call into question Steve Bruce and everybody lauds Graeme Jones for when things go right, when things aren't going well, you've also got to criticise Graeme Jones and ask questions as to whether this is working and whether he's actually having as big an impact as everybody thinks. Look, I think Newcastle are better technically this season. I think there's been some poor decisions made. Where are the lines? They are very blurred at Newcastle United. My understanding was that Steve Bruce still picked the team and the personnel, whereas a lot of the training ground work is done by Graeme Jones. Is there a clash there? Is there something that's not quite getting through? The relationship between the coaches seems to be really good, from what I've heard. So yeah, I don't know, and I think it's right to criticise Graeme Jones when you see things aren't going well. But do I think, from go back to the question that John, I think it was John put in, do I think that they should trade places? Absolutely not. The reason being is it would just add even more confusion. If Steve Bruce is to be binned, he needs to go. He needs to be taken out of the club, full stop. And if you couldn't have a manager step down and become some kind of number two, or even be around the place, it'd be like a bad smell. Would be really, really bad for morale. You need a clean break when you change managers, whether that's for good or bad. You have to have a clean break, and I think that's the only way forward. Would be a clean break. Do I see a clean break coming? I still think it's some way off. There are rumours out there, but I still think it's some way off.
Yeah, I agree. John Noble says, is Mike Ashley so worried about paying £3 million compensation to Steve Bruce and not worried about possibly losing the 300 million from the takeover if we go down?
I don't think look, there's a lot of people going on and on about this money thing. I don't necessarily think it's only about the money. Of course, that's a factor. But what you've got to do is look at previous behaviours at Newcastle United. They do not sack managers on a whim. Mike Ashley's Newcastle United does not do that. Why would they suddenly start now? They stuck by Bruce when it was 2 wins in 21. It's no surprise that they're sticking by him with no wins in 7. I mean, it's just past behaviours. Analyse them and you'll see exactly what the idea is. It's not a hard thing, but I don't know what it is with Newcastle fans. We get so jumpy about this kind of thing, but take a step back and think, are the club doing what they usually do? Absolutely. Do I agree with it? Not at all. But they're not changing, they're not changing their approach. They're just doing what they normally do.
Yeah, I would agree. It's just a strange situation. We are once again in Groundhog Day, and it's frightening. It really is. Yeah. Tom Dixon says, Liam, is there any news yet on how long Joe Willock will be out for? Of course, we saw Joe go down, and then he tried to get back up, tried to play on, but then ultimately was left with no option but to go off. Disappointing to see, but he hasn't been firing on all cylinders. Probably had his best game of the season, it has to be said, at Watford, when he wasn't expected to play, but it seems as if he's had a setback.
I think the suggestion is he's probably going to be all right after the international break, but again, it's not one that I've had an immediate update on this week or anything. So, but that was the initial prognosis, that it was a one that would probably see him out for the international break and no longer. But we'll have to wait and see on that one, unfortunately.
Belly, he says Newcastle need to bring in a couple of free agents and freshen up the team. If they did this, hopefully some of the old players might improve and try and save their spot in the team. I mean, yeah, there isn't much strength in depth, Liam. But of course,
they can't do that.
Yeah, you're right. And of course, in what we do have, hopefully, we're led to believe by the press reports is that we will have players returning for the Spurs game. You've already mentioned Wilson. Lascelles is penciled in for that game as well, as is one or two others. Dubravka has been mentioned as a possibility. You've just said Willock should be hopefully okay to return. And of course, the one man who divides opinion amongst the supporters, the man who can pass a ball, John Joe Shelby.
Yeah, and I think in the previous system he was a big miss. In this current system, would he be as big a miss? I'm not 100% sure on that one. But on the free agents thing, it's something you just rule that one out your head. It's absolutely impossible. Newcastle United have a full quota in the 25-man Premier League squad. They cannot sign anybody and bring them in and play them.
Okay, Phil on Twitter, he says, hi, Steve and Liam. He's quite sure Bruce is going nowhere and will remain in charge. He said, but what needs to happen on or off the pitch for that to change? And Bruce to be given his P45. He says, it must be a breaking point, even with compensation. I know I've touched on that a little bit, but let's hypothetically say that we lose the next 3 games. And I've seen one journalist already say that that's potentially the next milestone, that if he loses the next 3, he's out. We saw that in the last 4 games, and he's still here. What does have to happen, Liam, in your mindset? If we lose the next 3, could he be facing the sack?
I think the pressure will go up, and there'll be a lot more questions asked, and there might be some more of the behind closed doors meetings and words had. But I still don't think he loses his job. But that's just my opinion on the things that are here and the behaviours of Newcastle United. I don't believe he's as close as a lot of people seem to think he is. If he is close, it's more coming from Steve Bruce's side than it is coming from the club's side. That would be my understanding of it.
Okay, Martin McGuinness from Belfast. Good morning. He says, Steve, a question that's been challenging me recently as I enter my 47th year as a Newcastle supporter, 10 years more than me. Nothing ever seems to change. So the question is this. Where does Liam honestly believe that the club will be in 3 years' time?
Some question.
It is when you're not prepared.
3 years' time. Look, there's a number of answers I could give. I mean, hand on heart, probably floating along in the same kind of position. Probably. Does that mean that's what I want? No. And I hope that things can change for the positive. They could easily change for the negative, but I'd suggest that probably floating along in this lower mid-table malaise, probably continuing.
Okay, my answer to that would be, if there's a takeover, we'll be challenging Rafa Benitez for Europe, and if there's not a takeover, we'll be in the Championship, hoping not to go down. That's my honest opinion. That's how I feel anyway. Ian Hull, he says, Tarantino or Scorsese, Liam?
Scorsese, absolutely.
Yeah, Scorsese for me, I'm afraid, as well. And Big P, not sure why he thinks you're an expert on this. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No. I wouldn't order it as nah. It's not a sandwich, is it? Is it?
I would say no. It's a hot dog. It's a good one, though. I mean,
it's got its own little section. Like, is it a hot dog? Like a burger, I suppose, is a sandwich. But you wouldn't say I'm going to order a burger sandwich, would you?
No, no, you wouldn't. You're right. I've never thought of it. It's a good one, Big P. You've got us a bit flummoxed on that one. Like, we might have to do a whole show on that. Stephen says, "Hi, Steve. How confident are you that the Saudis can provide the appropriate evidence that PIF and the Saudi state are separate?" It's a good question, Stephen, because that really does, when you clear all the mess away around this, that really still seems to be the issue. But don't forget that the Saudis sent somebody, across to the Premier League to show them the paperwork that proved exactly that. So why are we still, months later, still faffing around with this? I thought the CAC case, and I've mentioned this on other shows, the hearing that we saw to see whether the CAC case can go ahead, I felt it was a massive positive, and I still haven't changed on that. I thought it was good, but I'm still not going to be cracking the cans open, doing dances on the table, celebrating a potential takeover, because we've been down that road before. And I'm certainly not going to start waxing lyrical about a takeover happening when my gut feeling still feels that the Premier League will pull a cat out the bag. I don't know, something out the bag or a rabbit out the hat, which is going to, for want of a better expression, piss on our chips. But let's wait and see. Let's just concentrate, unfortunately, on the football and see where this legal stuff gets us. But at the moment, I am still not confident. But let's see what happens. And I can't give you any reason. It's a gut instinct. It's just how I feel. Stu Taylor, well, we'll take this last one off Twitter for now. He says, why are the club using false economy to save money, Liam? Whatever the payoff Bruce is, will be less than the money's lost due to relegation. Again, we've touched on that, Liam.
It's the money. Like, I think everybody's really honing in on the money idea, as if he's penny pinching, that kind of thing. Of course, he does do that. I don't think this is just purely a money decision. I don't believe it's purely a money decision. I think if you look at the way that they act in the 15 years, nearly 15 years. This is par for the course. This is what they do. They stuck by Pardew through thick and thin when it was pretty thin at times. They stuck with Steve McLaren far longer than they ever should have. They stuck with John Carver when it was an absolute disaster for that sort of period. That's what they do, and I would suspect they'll continue to do that because they stuck by Steve Bruce once already this year. One thing I would say, a caveat on that is, if it continues to unravel, you said 3 games, Steve. Let's say it's 7 or 8 games, and we're really scaring down the barrel. Because if Newcastle don't pick up any points in October and November, December is absolutely horrendous. By the way, it's a shocking run of fixtures. Yeah, so if Newcastle United are in the bottom 3 going into December, they're going to be in big trouble coming out of January. And I think that's probably more likely a time frame where you'd look at it and there might be change in and around Christmas time.
Rich Story, good morning. He's from Loaded Mag. Give the guys a subscription. They're heading towards 1,000, and they've had some cracking shows on in the last 7 days. The interview with Youssef, I thought was fascinating. I don't know the guy, but I did enjoy listening to what he had to say. I find it bizarre in a lot of ways how, this roller coaster ride of the non-takeover as it is at the minute has got many people, questioning themselves, questioning their beliefs. And I thought that was a brilliant interview. Well worth a watch on Loaded. Rich says, thoughts on Steve Bruce being on holiday again? I wish it could be a permanent one. Now, look, there's a photo doing the rounds. It could be anybody. I've got to be honest. It's from such a distance. I don't know. I've retweeted it for people to have a look. I'm not sure that's Steve Bruce. And I think he's learned his lesson, to be honest. But if he is on holiday... it's not sending the right message out, but let's categorically state here, we do not know if Steve Bruce is sunning it up again. But if he is, surely to God, he's learned his lesson. He's not doing that again.
I don't think he is. No, that's my understanding. I don't think he is. But it would be it would be horrific. It'd be such a bad look if he was. I think it would be a short holiday because I think the understanding is that it's going to be a pretty full-on international break. And they're going to continue virtually all the way through with a few days maybe in between. That was a suggestion I think that he gave to the press who were there at Wolves on Saturday. So I would suspect he'll continue with that.
Okay, Graeme says, what if the jurisdiction does not go our way? Do you think the Premier League have been exposed enough, Liam?
Ultimately, I'll be absolutely honest on this. Like we can get all broad brush on it, saying I want the Premier League this, I want him heads to roll, I want this, that, and the other, I want him to be held accountable. If you roll it all back, I don't really care who's held accountable. I don't care who's held accountable. I just think they need to go back to our takeover and follow the rules that they set, take in and actually read and apply evidence that's been given to them, and roll back on some decisions that were made under influence and just do the right thing. That's all I want. If heads don't roll and Newcastle United get a takeover, I won't care.
Yeah, I agree, mate, as well. The whole takeover thing is, what we're all focused on, and we just want that takeover, I think. Mad Mark says, Ashley is all consumed by the takeover, would rather pay tens of millions in legal fees than pay a few million to get rid of Bruce to give this club a fighting chance of staying in the Premier League. Mad Mark, don't forget, mate, he's not playing with his money. That's the difference. The legal fees, and I don't know what the legal fees are for Nick DeMarco and co. But don't forget, he had 17 million off the consortium. 17 million pound. I'm sure that goes way beyond covering the legal fees, and probably gets him a few extra sets of trainers to sell in his shop. So he's not spending his own money. That's what we've got to remember.
Well, DeMarco's fee, I think, was probably a Sports Direct mug and a black and white tie, I think. Something like that. Some bread and a set of new knives. Cormac says, morning, Steve. Can you ask Liam, has he heard any whispers from the CAT case, whether it's gone in our favour or when a decision is going to be made? I've got to say, and bless him, I do get on with Burnsy. He was on our Think Before You Tweet campaign, as everybody knows. And look, he was brave enough to come on that show. Mouth of the Tyne is his account. He's put something up today about the CAT case. I'm led to believe that's not true. So whatever Burnsy's put up about that today on Mouth of the Tyne, I'm led to believe it's not true. So I doubt you've heard any whispers from this, Liam, have you? No, I haven't. And I think that's to be expected. There'll be no whispers coming out of the Competition Appeal Tribunal. Could there be from other sources? I'm going to be honest, I've not checked. I suspect we'll get some kind of decision. I didn't think it sounded like, and this could be me just preying on semantics of what was said, but the judge, the chair of the hearing to me sounded like somebody who wasn't going to hang around. Sound like somebody who would make a relatively swift decision on this. Didn't like the idea of delays. So using that, I would suggest that there will be a decision soon. But again, that's pure guesswork on my behalf. Yeah,
exactly. So wait and see. That's what we've got to say. Toon Tipster says, when's my interview?
I've just seen your DM. I'll drop you a message.
All right, okay. That should be interesting. Is it about our mum and our dad?
I don't know. He's just I don't know. He's messaging about this job thing that I put up last night. I don't think he's serious. Apologies if you are actually serious. I'm not ready to DM yet, but
hey, might be. You never know. Hey, he's good. He's got a face for radio. I mean, television. Terry Armstrong says, morning, lads. How was it last season when we won? Jones got the credit. Now we're losing all Bruce's fault, and people talking of Jones taking over. We know Bruce isn't running this team. Yeah, I mean, Terry, we did touch on that a little bit earlier, and I hope you caught that. Good morning. This is the fake Paddy Conroy account. Good evening. Good morning, and whatever it is, wherever you are, mate. Good to have you on. And I saw your input the other night. It was pretty good, actually. Tom says, Liam, where do you think Newcastle will get their first win from? Good God. Can you give us the lottery numbers while you're on?
Tottenham.
No.
Yes.
That's going to be the MSN headline. Journalist predicts Tottenham is Bruce's first win. I can see it now. I'm still getting them emails about you.
Good record against Tottenham, man. Good record against Tottenham, although let it slip in recent years a little bit, but always have a good game against them, and I think we'll get a result against them. I think we can beat them at home. Yeah, I do.
Morning, Keith. It is an early one today, mate. It is. We've got things to do, places to see, and I think we're both going to have to build an arc as well and get things in 2 by 2. Just don't get Mackems in 2 by 2. Scott says, go on, Liam, lad, on Simon Jordan. He's just a mouthpiece. And Anthony says, our centre-backs are slower than an asthmatic sloth with a moon boot on. Against Liverpool, etc., we will get annihilated.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
I did watch Liverpool Man City, and I've got to be honest, like you're watching that going. And in fact, I watched Crystal Palace Leicester, Liam, and I thought, God, oh mate, we're going to get murdered off them.
Yeah, I've seen it as well. I've seen both games, bits and bobs on Sunday afternoon, and it's like football from a different planet compared to the type of stuff that we're producing, or Watford, or the teams in and around that. We've played most of the teams who finish in and around with Southampton, possibly Leeds, because they're so erratic. We've played Watford. The only one we haven't played is Norwich. But we're in that little group. That's where we are. We're in that little group of about 5 or 6. Burnley, another one. We're nowhere near. We're light years ahead of teams in the middle of the division, never mind teams at the top.
Yeah, okay. Big shout out, as always, to our sponsors. Thank you to Spider VPN. Google Spider VPN. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg could do with this at Facebook after last night's outage. Google Spider VPN. They come up at the top of your search list. They can help you with all your internet issues and protect your ports on your computer. Very, very important in this day and age with cyber fraud, etc. So they are the boys to trust. Big shout out to skipsandbins.com, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Also, thanks to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 0191 389 7245, and to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. And they also run our website, NUFCmatters.com. Thanks to John at Jab Signature, who's got a busy week this week with the launch of his new brand. Good luck to you, John. Thanks for making our flyers. If you are a first-time visitor to the show, please click Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner and subscribe. We're another 100 subscribers in the last 2 days. Wow, we're up to 42,400. Remarkable. Hit the thumbs up to like the video. Click share to your social media. Drop into the comments box to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans or to get a comment on screen. We'll try to get through as many of them as possible. And we're also available as a podcast on all your podcast providers, including iTunes and Spotify. Just a quick shout out for the gigs we've got coming up in the next few weeks. An evening with Gavin Peacock, 29th of October at the Tyneside Irish Centre. And then we've got our Christmas event, which was postponed last year, with Supermac and Gibbo doing the talking on the 19th of November. And then an evening with Peter Beardsley on Friday, November the 26th, again at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets for all three events are available in the shop section at www.newcastlelegends.com. Also, a couple of events coming up, which I am comparing. A night with Rob Lee, Thursday the 28th of October. Tickets for that one from www.laurelswhitley.co.uk. Ticket price range for that is between £15 and £35. And then another event for the food bank, Thursday the 9th of December. Me and Malcolm will be down at Bobix, the old bar in Jesmond, where me and Liam are on. Tickets for that, bobix.com, and all proceeds for that event going to the food bank. And Punch Bowl, that's the fella, yeah. And NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk. Match day bucket is still operational 365 days of the year. Please make a donation if you are unable to get up to the food bank on a match day. That is a valuable tool to help continue to raise money for the food bank. And by God, with the news we're getting from the government each day, a lot of people are going to need it. We're also running the raffle for the food bank as well to win a custom signed pair of trainers in your size, signed by Peter Beardsley. Tickets are £1 from NUFC fans, foodbank.co.uk. Don't forget as well, Peter Beardsley Soccer School, Monday the 25th to Friday the 29th of October, Kingston Park, 10 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, £15 a day or £60 for the full week. If you fancy getting on that, you'll get your child on that during half term, please email pbsoccerschools@hotmail.com. All coaches are FA qualified and DBS checked. So well worth going along if you want your youngster to learn from one of the greatest players we have ever seen in a black and white shirt. And I have unashamedly plugged this a couple of times. This is a children's book I did a while back called The Ghost That Could Not Scare with BBC Radio Newcastle's Alfie Joey. I wrote the story. He did the wonderful illustrations. That is available on newcastlelegends.com as well via the shop. We are going to donate £2 to the food bank off each book sold. It's £12 in total. So if you want to buy a kid's book for Halloween for the kids, something a little bit different, a bit of a keepsake, it's a great story. And Alfie Joey's artwork, well, it speaks for itself when you see the cover. It's a proper Geordie book. And if you want to buy a copy of that, then please do. And anyone looking for a Christmas idea, I keep forgetting to plug this, and it's probably because it's my book, but Every Boy's Dream. Jamie Boyle wrote it in association with me, and it's about my 37-year history supporting the Black and Whites. And there's some interesting stories in there. It's not for the faint-hearted in some places, I've got to be perfectly honest, but I think you will enjoy it. So you're going to get that on Amazon. Joe says, unpopular opinion morning. We missed John Joe in the middle. Discuss, Liam.
Possible. When things aren't going well, you do look to players who could come in and make an impact. I see a lot of fans making the bizarre argument for Dwight Gale just because they think there's a instant dislike of Joe Linton. They don't like some Axeman in the middle. I don't see what Dwight Gale adds at all.
Well, that answers that question as well, then, because he's saying, do you think Gale should be getting some game time? So clearly not.
Gale got game time last season. At the back end of last season was utterly dreadful. He played in pre-season, was absolutely dreadful. You were there, Steve, for most of the games. Dwight Gale was one of the worst players on the park.
Good goal against Norwich.
That was it, yeah. That was it. Came on for 45 minutes against Norwich and looked up for it. The rest of it was just going through the motions. I don't see this. It's possibly the same a little bit with Shelvey, but I do think Shelvey can, at times, add something to that team. Gale, I don't see it. I don't see why we suddenly build these people up because they're not playing. When Dwight Gale was asked to produce the goods for Newcastle United consistently, going back 5 years now, outside of the Championship, couldn't do it. Could not do it. Played a full season virtually that first year we got promoted. I think scored 6 goals in the Premier League. Isn't good enough at Premier League level. We just need to accept that. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, I would say you're right there as well. I mean, the Gale situation is bizarre, I think, for everybody. But what can we do? It's Steve Bruce's decision. He clearly doesn't rate him, doesn't want to play him, and that's where we're at. Mark Cooper says, I'd rather lose 3 million than 150 million on us going down. Ashley, I think, is waiting to see what's going to happen with the cat case. But yeah, I think so. I think that's right. If anybody wants to support us as well, I often say, how can they support, etc. People haven't got money to sponsor. If you want to support, we do all our shows free. Join as a member. That's the way to show your support. So thank you for asking. Sacked Houghton on a whim. What was the rationale then, says Stephen Matthewson. So, of course, just getting back to what we're saying about Steve Bruce. I mean, he did. But, Derek Lambias wanted him out, I think. And they clearly felt they could bring somebody in better who could take the club forward. Yeah,
I think that was the thing at the time. But what I would say is, so that's one example. I've just given you 3 where they did the opposite. So that's more consistent behaviour is that they do tend to stick by their managers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I've just joined the stream and just heard Liam's comments about Simon Jordan. Beautifully articulated. He's the very reason I don't listen to TalkSport, plus all the other nonsensical peeps. Thanks, Twister Man. Who would you bring in, Liam, if Bruce did go? Wilder or Howe?
Either would do a job for me. I like Wilder's tactical nous. I thought was quite incredible the way when he went down with Sheffield United, so did Eddie Howe went down with Bournemouth. Both have got their merits, but Wilder for me edges it on in terms of the tactical stuff, because when he brought that Sheffield United side up, who were probably a bottom end Championship club, he brought tactical nuances like the attacking centre halves, all that kind of stuff. That was just something totally different, something you'd never seen before. So I think there's something in Wilder, but if it was Eddie Howe as well, by the same token, I would take him. Look, at the end of the day, they're not going to be top of anybody's list, really, if you want to bring a progressive manager in, but you can easily make the argument that both will be better than what we've currently got.
Yeah, I would say you're right. I don't think Ashley wants to sell the club now. He wants as much compensation as he can get from the cat case, then get the parachute payment for going down. God, I hope you're wrong. David Shepherd says, instead of playing Hendrick, if Willock's injured, shame he doesn't have the bottle to play Elliot Anderson. He may just be the spark that the side needs at the minute. It won't happen, but I wish it would. There's never an interest in playing youngsters, is there, at the moment?
Well, there isn't, but what I would say about this is Elliot Anderson doesn't play that role. Elliot Anderson is an out-and-out number 10. He's effectively a bit of a forward, so you couldn't play him in midfield, really. He could play there, but it would be far from his own natural position, to be honest.
Yeah, look at the Watford manager. Lasted 7 games and they got rid of their manager, and Bruce is still here. I know that's a frustrating thing for a lot of people. Mark says, could Bruce be put on gardening leave? That way we don't need to pay compensation straight away.
I honestly, I just don't see it happening. So I think it's all hypothetical. Of course he could. They could do anything. They could sack him in the next 5 minutes. But do I think it's going to happen? No.
Liam, what do you think this team is missing so far this season that we had at the end of last season? It's the same players, same staff, but something doesn't feel right. Is it simply Willock's goals?
I think it's stagnation. I think it's attitude. I think Newcastle United have stood still and everybody else has progressed. I think it comes from the very top. And I think it's a problem. I think they thought they would be able to get by. They clearly haven't. I think you're looking at players in the defensive. I said this from the very start of the summer. You're looking at defenders who lack pace and lack athleticism. And you might write your teams down on paper in the summer and say, oh, well, they're all right. They've got a good pack of defenders. We're seeing it now. It needed major surgery, the back line, if anything. They also needed a backup striker, Callum Wilson, which we're living it now. And they also need a little bit of an injection in midfield. They've probably got by with the midfield, to be honest, because we've seen Sean Longstaff step up. and become the player that we thought he might well be. Of course, he's not perfect, but he has stepped up from his performances in the last 2 seasons. So yeah, I think they've probably got away with the midfield, but the defence, it's causing them problems week in, week out. The fullbacks aren't really fullbacks, aren't really good enough, and the centre halves are. We've seen it with Federico Fernandez. He's still the best defender Newcastle United have, but if he can isolate him as a centre forward. He's 33. He's 33. You can run past him in a heartbeat. It's the same with Kieran Clark. It's the same with Paul Dummett. It's the same with Jamal Lascelles, and he's not 33, by the way. It's the same with Fabian Shaw. I mean, it's the whole back line needs major surgery. And a lot of people overlook that in the summer, but I think there's a lot of people coming around to that idea now that actually on paper it might look like we've got defenders, but they're all the same. You need something different. You need players who cover each other, and we don't have that. We've just got static, slow central defenders who are getting cut open week in, week out off mediocre teams. Like you said, Steve, let's wait to see when Mo Salah's having a go at Federico Fernandez, or let's see when it's Kevin De Bruyne and Raheem Sterling and Jack Grealish going at that back four, because we'll be in big trouble.
Yeah. What's Liam's take on last Wednesday's court cases, John?
I thought I watched it from start to finish. I actually really, really enjoyed it. I said that last week that I would enjoy the process. Did the kind of detail come out that I thought? I did say last week not a lot, and I still don't really think there was a whole lot. What it did do was confirm a lot of the things that we've been talking about on here, that I've been writing about, that people run down avenues and say, you're a conspiracy theorist, this, that, and the other. It's coming from somewhere because there is evidence to suggest that these things have happened. So I was quite pleased in that sense, but I enjoyed it as a spectacle, really enjoyed it, and just wait with everybody else to see exactly what the result is. I couldn't say which way it went. I think there were more questions asked of Daniel Jowell. The opposition QC, I can't remember, Lewis was it, looked a lot more flustered at times, frustrated. Argue the same point for about an hour and a half, which I think everybody out there looking at Twitter seemed to get very frustrated about in that first few hours. But yeah, as a spectacle and as a fan and as a journalist, I thoroughly enjoyed it, to be honest.
Rachel says, Jaffa cake, biscuit, or cake, she says. Is it a biscuit or a cake?
You couldn't dip it, so it's probably a cake.
That's it, biscuit, but I could dip it.
Could you? Do you think it would just drop in?
Yeah.
I've never done it, so.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I've dipped it, and I think it's fine, but I mean, a lot of people do think it's a cake.
Yeah, I think it's a mini cake, yeah.
Rachel, what do you think it is? Mark says, is he only safe because other clubs are struggling too? If we were 6 or so points adrift, I think they might have taken the plunge. That's an interesting theory.
Aye, but other teams are going to struggle because, like I say, we're in that little group of 5 or 6 who won't get easily get themselves out of it. Newcastle United did last season, pulled themselves out of that group at the back end of the season. But there's a poor group of teams at the bottom of the division, and Newcastle United just have to make sure that they've got 3 worse than them. I think if by Christmas they're looking in that position, then I think Steve Bruce is on a really, really sticky wicket. I think he could get the boot, but I see the rumours going around, and I'm just not having it. Unfortunately, I think the club consistently they've been quite consistent, and the most recent evidence is that they stick by their manager. They did it through 2 wins in 21. We're not at that stage yet. We're at the start of the season. And remember that Brighton game, it looked like we were going down. There was nobody would have backed Newcastle to stay up after that Brighton game, and they did. So they think they were justified in doing what they did.
Rich Story says, what did you both make of Masters sitting next to Daniel Levy in the director's box at Spurs on Sunday? I thought that's awful. It was an awful photograph. And again, you just think you would have a little bit more sense than to do that. It was almost like saying, look, here we are. It was like rubbing our noses in it.
You could take it that way. I'll be honest, I took it the total other way. It was Premier League chief executive sits next to Premier League football chief executive. I didn't really read anything into it. I didn't think it was of any concern either, but I can see why people thought that.
Yeah, photos, that's what I'm saying. Photos can can be misleading, I guess. But yeah, I just didn't think it looked good. But again, you never know when the photo was taken. It obviously was at the game at the weekend. But yeah. Lads, Simon Jordan again saying Ranieri will take Watford down due to poor win percentage. Last two clubs, yet stands by Bruce with a win percentage in the 20s. Yeah, this is what we're saying about clickbait. Spurs, Palace and Chelsea are the next three. We might scrape a point somewhere. Hope Brucey's got a good Halloween costume, says Paul. Bruce wins this season 0. Holidays 2. That's if it is him. Jonathan says, Liam, do you think the only realistic person who would want to manage NUFC under an Ashley regime would likely be a championship manager looking to step up or a washed up has-been out of work?
I still think Newcastle United would be a job that plenty of people would take. I don't think it's going to be, like I've mentioned on this show before, it's a certain level of manager. We're not going to get ones who we would, in our eyes, ideally see would take them on to a different level. But you never know. That can often work in your favour. I mean, there's other managers who weren't names who've done good jobs in the Premier League. You just don't know. I still think there'll be plenty of managers who want the job, even though it's probably the least appealing job it's been in a long time. I still think you get people want to manage Newcastle United.
Yeah, Mark says, do you think this consortium should be saying something to Ashley about the situation? They can't, Mark. They can't. Their job's done. They just got to sit and wait. In major news here, Jaffa cake equals can't have one of those donut ones with no orange in them, says John. Rachel has got back to us. She says, I think it's a cake as it goes hard if left out. Biscuits go soft.
Oh, that's a theory.
That is a theory. John from Cutex says he dips Jaffa cakes all the time. I'm
not. Do you know why? It's because the kids eat them, but I'm not a Jaffa cake fan. I'm not really bothered by them. So I would never. I would normally just. I'm a solid chocolate digestives man if I've got a cup of tea.
Mm-hmm. James Jones says he loves us. Thank you, James. Much appreciated. I'm feeling it. there. Basildon Bond says, I'm a bit worried about the lack of atmosphere at St. James's. You know I love an atmosphere. Very good. I see what you did there. Look, atmospheres. We're living in an era of fabricated atmospheres. We're down at Wolves on Saturday, and they've got to play a song when they score a goal just to get the crowd going. It's awful. It's fabricated. There's not many good atmospheres left unless you go down to the lower divisions where Sunderland are. But yeah, I agree. Atmospheres are crap. And we haven't got the songs because we haven't got the players. The away atmosphere was terrible on Saturday. There was more people arguing and fighting and disputing, and apathy hit the crowd 100%. But I also think, the rain didn't help. People were just wet, soaked through. People weren't happy. But I also think that there's just, there's lack of players to sing. And the away end now, when we're there, it's spilling into home games. They were singing about Shola Ramiobi, Alan Shearer, Jonas Gutierrez. You name it. Anybody who's on the pitch. I think we've only got ASM, Carl Darlow, Matt Ritchie. You're struggling after that for people sing about it. That's why the atmosphere is crap. Oh, Liam, you've gone into some kind of frozen zone. His phone must have rang, and I'm chatting away there. He's disappeared. Okay, whilst Liam is sorting his technical issues back at his end, I'll take him off screen. You'll have to come back into the room. We've only got about 10 minutes left because I've got to shoot off. As I say, I've got a train to catch, etc. I do want to remind you that we have got a special show tomorrow night on Wednesday with Toon tipster Joe Walker. He will be doing his dream team. So please make sure you get onto that and give it a watch. He's picked some fantastic players, well worth a watch. Last night, the 5-minute rant, of course, with the lads from Loaded, Pete Davey and Chris Hall, is well worth a watch. And if you missed out on Holly, which used to be on a Monday night, but is now on a Sunday, her show is uploaded on the channel as well. The Holly and Steve show, well worth a watch. I do want to give a plug to this one as well. If you're looking at Christmas presents for somebody, get yourself onto Woucher and onto Groupon. We have an afternoon with Mick Lowes and Newcastle and England legend Peter Beardsley. Now, that is at the Time Theatre, the oldest working Victorian theatre in the UK. But if you go onto Woucher and you go onto Groupon, you can buy tickets for that now at a very reduced price. Well worth doing it. Good idea for Christmas. You can gift them to somebody as well. But get yourself onto Woucher or onto Groupon and get your tickets for that today. And don't forget as well, we've got the Jeff Hendrick t-shirt on my Twitter timeline. All proceeds going to the food bank. Simply place a bid. Find me at Twitter at Steve Wraith, and you will be able to place a bid for that t-shirt. Highest bid wins. I'll announce the winner to that on Friday. I'll go through a few of these questions and quotes that we've got up here. Stephen says, thoughts on the 2 goals conceded against Wolves. Stephen, I was disappointed. And I was disappointed in Carl Darlow with those goals. I did feel he could have done better. Once, fair enough, you can make a mistake. You might not be positioned correctly. Second time, to be beaten in the same manner, very disappointing. As for the build-up to the goals, we're just not good enough, mate. We're just not good enough. And that is the bottom line. Steve Bruce, for all his faults, has definitely been hung out to dry by the owner, not given an opportunity to bring in anybody. We saw that, obviously, that dispute between him and the echelons, the higher echelons at the club, when he thought he was going to have the chance to bring in Chowdhury and he didn't. So, yeah, but conceding those 2 goals, that's the problem. And as soon as you concede 1 goal now, as a Newcastle fan, you're literally going, well, the best we can hope for is a draw here. That's how bad it is, because we don't have anybody to score goals. That's the biggest damning problem we have this season. We didn't bring in another striker. Lee says, wow, Liam, bold claim about getting a win against Spurs. Will that be Bruce's 1,000th game as a manager? Will his luck return? It will be his 1,000th game. And 999 he played. And as I said on the Holly show, he needs the emergency services at the minute, 999. Barry Mitchelson says, isn't Ashley just playing Jones and Bruce off against each other and making the players dislike Bruce? By doing this, they will think Bruce will walk out himself. I don't think Ashley actually cares, mate. I really don't. Ashley doesn't do day-to-day at the football club. He leaves that to Lee Charnley and Justin Barnes. They are the main people at the football club. You have Mike Ashley, obviously owns it, but he has Lee Charnley as the chief executive. But it's Justin Barnes who Lee Charnley has to go to get to Mike Ashley. I don't believe they sit down and have cozy cups of tea and chat about what they can do for the better of the football club. And I think that's half the problem. Rafa Benitez fan says, Joe Linton, 6 goals in 76 Premier League games. What an utter failure. Can't believe he gets defended and praised for just breathing. He cost the club £40 million, man, and people are praising him when he breathes. You try to find some positives, I'm afraid, when things are that bad. And there isn't any positives really about Joe Linton. He's simply doing the basics, and that's all he can do. As I said at the weekend, it was simply a case of get the ball to Big Joe and hope he can win the header, and pick up the bits and pieces. That was our tactics. It's normally a back 10 when we play these teams, says Geordie Jedi. Yeah, against Man United, Liverpool, Man City, you are right. Next one from Life Goals. I had a dream that Newcastle ended up 14th and the takeover was completed just before the season ended with Amanda on the scene. My dreams have a 60% hit rate, so that's a good sign. Wow, well that is interesting. We'll come back to that, Life Goals, if that does happen. John says 37 points from our last 38 games, i.e. your whole season. 9 wins, 9 draws, 19 losses, relegation form, end to last season. Gosh, shows how bad we've been. You're right as well. Life Goes as well, says Liam and Stephen, are you having a beard growing competition? If so, Steve is leading, but Liam is showing promising signs. Barry also says, do you think that the CAT case can make their minds up on the takeover and pull out of the arbitration? Don't know. Okay, bring Liam back in. His internet being attacked by rain, I think. Can you hear us, Liam? Oh, he's not having a good time. He's frozen again. I think we're going to have to take Liam out. I don't think we're going to get Liam back. It's not looking positive. Life Goal says, we've come to that one. Gerard says, sorry, late to the show, so may have answered. What is Liam's take on all of a sudden national papers now writing negative stuff about the EPL following the CAT? Now, that's a good question. Unfortunately, Liam can't answer it, but I do think there has been a change. Certainly has been a change in direction by the national media. And, that can only be a positive. People are waking up. And it's better late than never, as far as I'm concerned, to see the national press actually coming back and, saying, well, there's something wrong at Newcastle. There is still pundits, of course, Danny Murphy on Match of the Day, who says everything's going well. I really don't understand people saying that. And he's not doing that to be controversial. And we've had this with Danny Murphy before on Match of the Day. where he said things which he hasn't quite put his brain in gear before he's opened his mouth. And ultimately that's it. But yeah, Henry Winter did a fantastic article. Newcastle man, of course. And he really nailed it, I thought. Rafa Benitez fan says, does Mike Ashley need to add another coach to Bruce's coaching staff to save him again? Getting ridiculous how much help he needs. He's useless. Just get rid. Yeah, I mean, I hope not. That would be ludicrous. Just tone deaf PR from the Premier League, having Marcia sitting next to Levy like a guest of honour. I agree. Phil says, back to Gail, Liam. If the club like you think he is not worth a game, why is he given a place in the squad and an extended contract? You know what? I'll answer that again because Liam's not here. He's given an extended contract. It has to be something to do with trying to sell him. They clearly didn't sell him because maybe there's something in his contract to say he's got to have an extension. He's got to be paid more. I mean, you just don't know. It's what's in his contract. The finer detail in his contract is the key, Phil. I think they time to a longer deal. They might get a little bit more money for him, but it's failed miserably. It really has. Life goals again. Nigel Pearson will galvanise the side for a few months before the bloom comes off the rose. I'd have him back for a bit. John says I can easily get a whole box of Jaffa cakes. They're like catnip to me. I think you're right, mate. Do you think, Steve, that if the cat case in January is in public, people jump on the EPL in a similar way to protect the big six? No, I don't. I don't think people will protect the big six. I think people understand exactly where we're at. Alan Thompson says, the single worst problem, Steve, is he's constantly playing players out of position. Gale not playing, Lewis not getting a game when we have Richie at left back. Exactly, Alan. And that's something we've all said. Mick Lewis has said it. I've said it. No understanding as to why Lewis is not getting a game and Richie is being forced to play at left back when it's clear that his legs can't take that position anymore. John says 40 million for Joe Linton while Everton bought Damari Gray and Townsend for 1.8 million. Recruitment has to be better. And looking forward to Fury versus Wilder fight at the weekend. Who do you fancy? Fury all day, Tom, 100%. Okay, sadly, we're not going to get Liam back today. The weather seems to have beaten his internet into submission. Don't forget, tomorrow night, at 6 o'clock, Joe Toon Tipster will be giving his dream team. And thanks very much for watching, guys and girls. And look forward to seeing you again live with Super Mac on Thursday night, taking your questions. Until then, goodbye from me.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again.